Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. My name is Wolf Burchard. I'm curator at the Metropolitan Museum and one of the co-curators of Inspiring Walt Disney, the animation of French decorative arts, which is still on here at the Huntington, but only for another 2 weeks. So I can only encourage you to come back to the museum, see the exhibition before it closes, and obviously to bring all your friends. Now, I'll try and be very brief with my introduction, but really before starting, I want to not only thank all of you for coming and for being here tonight, but I really want to thank the Huntington Museum for asking me to participate in this conversation today, but also for all that they have done to host this exhibition that I've been working on for so many years. And it's really wonderful. It's really special for me being here tonight because I'm going to fly back to New York first thing tomorrow morning, and I'm bidding farewell to the exhibition. So thank you, Huntington, for hosting this exhibition. So tonight, I have the great pleasure of having a conversation with Linda Woolverton, who has written the screenplay for various films, including those for which we have the posters here on stage. And I'm going to share with you her biography, which I'm going to read to you. I hope you'll forgive me, but that will ensure that I don't leave anything out. So Linda Woolverton launched her career as a writer with two young adult novels before she began writing Saturday morning animated television shows. That eventually led her to writing her first animated feature, Disney's Beauty and the Beast. Upon its release in 1991, the film won the Golden Globe for the Best Comedy Musical and became the first animated film to be nominated for a Best Picture Academy Award. Woolverton then wrote the screenplay for The Lion King animated feature, for which she shares screenplay credit. She went on to rewrite the script for Homeward Bound, The Incredible Journey, as well as contributing to the animated features Aladdin and Mulan. Linda adapted the script of Beauty and the Beast for the Broadway stage and received the Tony Award nomination for Best Book of a Musical in 1994. She was also awarded the Laurence Olivier Award for Beauty and the Beast for Best New Musical in the UK. Beauty and the Beast ran in New York between 1994 and 2007, becoming the 6th longest-running show in Broadway history. She also co-wrote the book for Elton John and Tim Rice's musical Aida, which ran for 5 years at the Palace Theatre. In 2008, Linda received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Writers Guild of America animation writers for her long-time work in the field of animation. Her script for Alice in Wonderland, directed by Tim Burton and starring Johnny Depp, was released in March of 2010. The film grossed over $1 billion worldwide, and she became the first female screenwriter with a sole credit on a billion-dollar film. Woolverton went on to write the screenplay for Disney's Maleficent, starring Angelina Jolie, and we have the poster here. And the film was released in May 2014 and became a worldwide success. She also wrote the sequel to Alice in Wonderland, Through the Looking Glass, and co-wrote the Maleficent sequel, Mistress of All Evil. Now, just before I ask Linda to join me on stage, I just wanted to very quickly quickly summarize why we're here today, and this is really because of the exhibition that is still at the Huntington for another 2 weeks. And one point that this exhibition really wanted to make, and I know some of you were here Monday night, so I'm going to keep it brief because I've made my points Monday night as well. What really the exhibition tried to bring home was the incredible draftsmanship that lies behind the making of Disney hand-drawn animated films. And we really try to summarize that with this wall. This is a picture from the New York venue at the Metropolitan Museum, where you have 24 drawings that summarize this idea that you need 24 drawings for 1 second of animation. And in this case here, the transformation scene where Cinderella's dress is transformed from rags to riches. The show went on to be at the Wallace Collection in London, where the production of Beauty and the Beast started in 1989, and we were able to reunite the Disney's responses to Fragonard's famous painting, The Swing, which was especially conserved for the exhibition. And then, of course, the show was shown here at the Huntington Museum. And that was a true homecoming, because this exhibition is the first museum display devoted to Walt Disney's hand-drawn animation since 1940. And so that made it really special. And one thing that is rather special, not necessarily for the animation geeks, but certainly for the geeks of decorative arts, is that in the exhibition we were able to reunite for the first time in 250 years 2 pairs of Sèvres tower vases that kind of look like a Disney castle before, but 200 years before the first Disney castle was built. And these 2 pairs were made 250 years ago in Paris at the Sèvres manufactory, then were separated. One belongs to the Huntington, the pink pair, and the green pair belongs to the Met. We brought them together for the first time in 250 years at the Met in December of 2021. And then they traveled together to London, then they traveled together to California, and now they're going to be split up again. And I hope it won't be another 250 years until they are reunited. And really what this exhibition did was to try and bring together the creative genius of the decorative artists of the 18th century and that of Disney animators, really with the aim of bringing the inanimate to life. And this is something that Linda and I will be talking about. And to me, it's so special that the show should come to a closure here at the Huntington in the former garage of Henry Huntington, which was loosely modelled on the Grand Trianon at Versailles, because to me, it doesn't really get much more Disney than that. So I'm going to ask Linda now to come out and join me on the stage, and then we're going to have, hopefully, or surely, a very interesting conversation. How about I bring my notes? That might be quite helpful. Well, Linda, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. That is such a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
So, Linda, before we start talking about Beauty and the Beast, I thought we'd start talking about your personal relationship with the Huntington Museum, which I gather is a very close one.
I used to come here with my grandmother, who was in love with the Huntington, especially the Rose Garden, and she particularly loved the Blue Boy and Pinky. So we would drive from Long Beach with my sister and my mother and my grandmother all the way, and we would come up here. I don't know, I probably started around when I was 5 years old. And we would come regularly, especially in spring when the roses were blooming, and we'd go visit the Blue Boy and Pinky, and she had prints in her bedroom. So that tradition went on when I became a mother, and I brought my daughter here all the time when she was growing up as well. And I just have to say that the Huntington has been such a large part of my family and has sustained me personally so much through the years. I come here for inspiration. I have written here. So it's an absolute privilege and an honor to be able to speak to you here tonight.
Well, that's wonderful. And I think you said earlier also that it even sustained you through the pandemic, that you came here during the pandemic.
I came here during the pandemic. It was really beautiful, and it really helped me get through it, as we all did.
So, Beauty and the Beast was really a pivotal moment in your career. Can you take us back to the moment when you started working on the film and exactly how it all came about?
I had written an animated a film, a screenplay that Disney did not make. But off of that, I was invited to take a look at Beauty and the Beast to be a possible film. So I was given one of the fairy tale, one of the versions of the fairy tale, the shorter version, and I wrote a non-musical screenplay off of my version of what that would be. And we got directors on, we did some artwork, and then it was a non-musical, and then Little Mermaid premiered. And Disney flew us all out there to meet with Howard Ashman and Alan Menken, because the thought was, maybe this should be a musical. And Howard Ashman had read the script, and saw some of the artwork, and at the time, the animated objects didn't speak. They just kind of floated around. And Howard said, "Who's going to sing my songs?" So that all changed. And suddenly, once they start talking, then they have very distinct personalities, and then we had to match every character with what they did in the castle. So there was this long list of what their jobs were then the personality kind of had to fit the job. Like Cogsworth had to be the uptight, person who thinks he's in charge, but he isn't. And also obviously Lumiere. So, and Mrs. Potts, the mother of them all. So that's really how I came to it. And then when I met Howard, we started working together. And I lived in LA. I had just been married. So just come back from my honeymoon, and then went off to New York to work with Howard, who lived in Beacon. And so I was in the city, and I would take the train every day, which was an hour-and-a-half train ride to Beacon, and work with Howard in a hotel room, and the other two directors, and then go home on the train every night. This is not anything I was used to. I'm a California girl. And it was cold in the winter. And I would stand in the train station waiting for the train to come. It's dark and freezing and those little huddle things. And I'm thinking, how did I end up here? How did I get here?
And how long did that go on? I mean, how long was that?
That was maybe,
period?
6 months or something. And then it started being animated. And then the story people would come and start working visually. And then I went home to write the script. Mm-hmm. And so I would write, in terms of making it a musical, Howard's whole idea was he writes the lyrics and Alan writes music to the lyrics. So Howard would say, just write through this. We knew where the songs were going to go. Just write through the scene as if there's no song. So like, for example, Belle walking through town. One of the things that, Howard and I had decided that Belle was going to be a reader, because we wanted to make her a different Disney heroine. We wanted to make her not a victim heroine, but one who was proactive and intellectual and not living on her looks and all those things. So when we said we wanted to make her hobby reading, the Disney people didn't think that was an active enough activity. She was sitting in a chair. So I remembered when I was young, I would read going to the grocery store for my mom. Like I was reading, she would say, go get the milk. So I would read to the store, read through the store, get the milk, pay for the milk, keep reading, read out the door, and read all the way home. And I thought, let's do that with Belle. Let's send her through town reading. So that's really how that happened. But so the whole opening of that sequence, he said, just write as if there was no song there. So I did, and this was fax days, back in fax days. I would fax it to him, and then wait a couple days, and then it would come fax back, and it would be lyric. And it would be all the lyrics that I had written, and he had just translated into his lyrics, his brilliant lyrics. And that's how the songs got written through the musical.
Just amazing. It's just amazing to think of that, and amazing to be so lucky to work with people who have such creative energy. I mean, must have been so wonderful for you to sort of bounce your creativity back and forth?
Howard was a genius, no question about it, and he was very. He suffered no fools, so you couldn't be slow or not with it, and he would just sort of lacerate you with his wit. You would just be sort of bleeding from all these places before you even realized, because he was so just rapier wit. So it was scary a little, because basically I had no experience in all of this. I was just just sort of plucked out of Long Beach, California, and plunked at the feet of this master. And I had never done this before. So this is the biggest gift that Disney ever gave me. To be sitting in Howard's presence and work with him like that was such an honor and a privilege.
And can you just explain to us again? So you wrote the screenplay, parts of which he then turns into songs, and then the animators come in and they start storyboarding the scenes that you had written.
Every scene, sort of like every scene in the movie, is divided, and every scene is storyboarded. And then, so now you're looking at it instead of on the page. Now it's translated into hand-drawn storyboards, which you all know what they look like.
And you just getting back to the exhibition, there's a wonderful storyboard that is based on Frau Gnauster's Swing from the first early version of Beauty and the Beast in the exhibition, where you see Belle in a pink dress on a swing being pushed by her father, and then her aunt Clarice arrive, all of which obviously has been cut in the final version of the film.
Right, yes. So and then it's storyboarded, and then you go back and again as a writer and make it cohesive. Make the voices all sound the same, like it's the same character. It's like Belle seems different in this scene than that scene, so there has to be this sort of a conducive voice and character all the way through.
And it must be incredibly difficult when writing those dialogues, because, of course, everything has to be animated. There's a huge amount of draw mileage. And every sentence, almost every word matters. And you can't just go back and say, we're going to rewrite this when it's in the process of animation. I mean, to try and summarize certain feelings and emotions and ideas succinctly must be a real challenge. Also because these films aren't terribly long.
It was like writing a haiku. It's that succinct. It absolutely is. And it taught me so much. Even writing live action films, I write. I don't fill up the whole page. It's not all dense, because I come from animation, which is like you have to really, like a haiku, you have to really choose your words carefully because you don't get that many.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. So you were talking about Belle and how you made her read, and you really wanted her to be a different kind of Disney heroine. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Well, I mean, again, Howard and I just really felt. I actually am a feminist, and I grew up in the beginning of the whole feminist movement, and I thought that women wouldn't accept a Disney heroine who was so passive. I just didn't believe it. I just didn't think that would be palatable to people. So I felt that, and I was like a secret feminist. I was secret about it, but I just really wanted her to be strong and intellectual and not relying on her looks. She absolutely had to be beautiful because it's Beauty and the Beast, but she had to not be conscious of it, not like so self-aware of what she looked like, but more so. I think you're the most beautiful as any human being when you're so engrossed in something passionately that you love, and that's what I wanted her to be. So that's why the hair goes in her face. She's not conscious of how stunning she is, and so that, and from the fairy tale, she stays at home and her father goes to the castle, and he gets all tangled up with the Beast. And he makes a promise to the Beast that he's going to send one of his daughters back. That's crazy. Who would do that? But we flipped all around. So when he disappears, and she goes after him. She doesn't wait. She's not sitting home waiting, baking cakes. She's out there, looking for her father. And so she takes action so that we understand that this woman isn't going to be someone who's going to just, fall to the floor in the face of the beast. She's going to stand up. And we have to know that we have to expect that of her, because she stands up to Gaston. He's an idiot. He's a gnat. He annoys her. So the beast isn't going to be something that, especially to protect her father, the beast isn't going to scare her off, because she passionately wants to save her father's life. So that's the kind of heroine that Howard and I wanted to write.
Which of course is also very different from, well, as you said, from the heroine in the original story, who basically is seduced not by the mellowing character of the beast, but really by the luxury of the castle. I mean, she's, the castle in the original story is described in great detail, and I think she then, when at night she falls asleep and she dreams of shopping sprees across Paris. I mean, it's all about consumerism at the time.
Absolutely.
And that, and ultimately, the original version of Beauty and the Beast was written for girls of polite society, and the story was, well, you try and find yourself a rich husband, no matter what he looks like. So it's a very different character that you created. And talking about, no matter what he looks like, tell us about your ambitions for the Beast and what that character was supposed to carry.
The Beast, he was a boy. We talked a lot about the age of responsibility. There was a big argument about how old the prince should be when he's cursed. And there was a big argument, 12, that's too young. What is the age of responsibility that you need to be responsible for your actions? And so we thought about 15-ish. There was a big argument around it. I remember that took on days of arguing about the age of responsibility.
You couldn't tell us who was taking what position. You won't tell us that. But anyway, it's very interesting anyway.
I can't. But ultimately, we landed on around 15. And he made a mistake. He's a spoiled, in this castle. Everybody dotes on him. He's not a kind person. He's not kind to the sorceress. That he doesn't. The old woman who comes to the castle, and the idea for that came from Greek mythology. Because the gods and goddesses would disguise themselves and come down and test you. So he's tested and he fails. He made a mistake. This kid made a mistake. And he has to pay for it. And everybody has to pay for this mistake. So he's tortured. And I wanted him to be tortured. And I wanted him to have this rage, but also have this sorrow and this compassion if he hurt something. So I wrote that. I got really dense on that part about his emotions and his feelings. I wrote it all in there. And I remember I was talking with Glenn Keane, who you met the other night if you were here. And he said to me, we can't animate that many emotions. We can't animate that depth of emotion. And I said, I think you can. And he did. He did.
Yeah, if anyone could, then Glenn Keane
could do it. Yep.
So I think that is such a key element, this idea of being able to come back on your mistakes. I think that is so important. Then there's one element that has been brought up in the past in the context of Beauty and the Beast, and then you never know whether people are over-interpreting, but there's a transformation of the Beast, beautifully animated by Glenn Keane, and then leading up to that, when Gaston is and the angry mob is coming to the castle, and they're singing "Kill the Beast," and it's been, at the time of the release of the film, been read as a kind of metaphor for the AIDS crisis, of people with a stigma and that other people don't understand. do you think that is serendipity, or do you think that is something that Howard Ashman may have placed deliberately?
I think he was living with the demon. He didn't tell us he was sick, so we didn't really know. He just couldn't leave New York, which is why I had to go there. So we didn't really, know he was sick until I think when Little Mermaid was at the Academy Awards. That's when he told Alan, I believe. But yeah, he was living with that demon inside of him, and he talked a lot about being depressed. He talked about a lot about having this like dark cloud over his head all the time, and I didn't understand it because I didn't know he was sick. So I think so, absolutely, because you write from your subconscious. It's coming out. Can I give you an example of one of my other movies about writing from your subconscious?
Yeah,
In Maleficent, I was being interviewed after Maleficent by the LA Times, and I was talking about coming back from a mistake, which seems to be a common theme of mine. And I was talking about the moment when she kisses her and she's apologizing for cursing her. And I realized in the interview, I wrote this whole movie as an apology to my daughter for the divorce. And I realized that as I was being interviewed, that all of the subconscious feelings was really being translated into art. So, yes, I think that's what Howard was doing.
Gosh, that's very powerful. And tell us about the rose. I know that you put a lot of thought into the rose that plays such an important role in the film.
Howard was sort of making us go through every single icon of the original fairy tale to see if it had a place in our story. And we, got rid of some things, or got rid of other things, or brought some things back. And then there was the day I knew that we were going to be talking about the rose, because the rose is really significant in the fairy tale. And I knew if I had to have a really great rationale to keep the rose in the story, otherwise Howard was going to throw it out. So I'm on.
It wasn't going to sing, was it?
It couldn't sing. Out it goes. So I'm on the train. It's an hour-and-a-half train ride. And I'm on the train, and I'm thinking, okay, between now and when I get there, I have to have a rationale for the rose. Tick, 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 tick. And I'm thinking, oh, it's the time clock. It's the time of his life. And each petal is a year. And it became this ticking clock, this heartbeat for the whole story. It's the center of everything. And I pitched that after the hour-and-a-half train ride, and Howard bought it. So that's where the rose came from.
Well, that's wonderful. That really is wonderful. The frustrating thing for me is having conversations with you like this right now feels that I need to sit back and rewrite the exhibition catalogue. But there'll have to be a sequel. Now, are there any really fun anecdotes that you sort of associate, or any anecdotes that you associate with the writing of this? So I think Chip was also, for instance, something that came up rather randomly. Howard and I were communicating by fax. That's how we were communicating then. And I was writing this scene about Mrs. Potts, and I thought, wouldn't it be funny if she had a little teacup and he had a little chip in his head, and we called him Chip. So I wrote that in the scene, just as a joke between Howard and I. I didn't have any expectation it would be anything else. It was just a little joke. He loved it. Next thing you know, Jeffrey Katzenberg, who's running the studio, loves Chip. Chip became a thing, this huge, now there's toy Chips everywhere, It's amazing. Yeah, it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful to think how these things, literally come alive, and you don't think that it's actually going to happen. It started as a joke.
Yeah.
And I really love the story of the rose. Now, so you were talking about Belle and how you developed her, or you developed her character, and thinking about her reading as part of, your feminism. Is there anything you would do differently? I mean, the film, was written more than 30 years ago. Is there anything you would write differently today from your own personal vantage point, or indeed just reflecting on how the world may have changed over the last 30 years?
That's a really interesting question, because, the stage musical that's been running around the world for about 20 years now. We're doing a sort of reiteration of it in Australia. It opened in the UK last summer. And in that time, obviously, the world has changed. And so I, at Disney's request, I went back and looked through the musical script, because I can't change the movie. And I found a lot of things. There were a lot of things like the silly girls. I rewrote the silly girls because they're like a big lump of girly silliness. And that's it was funny then, it's not funny now. So I changed that. So there's a lot of things that I can currently do because I'm working on the show that I've changed. There's, we can't say master. So I had to go back and change all that all the way through. And other things,
What did you change the silly girls to then?
Oh, this is brand new. This is brand new. It hasn't even, I just wrote it. It's going to go in the show in Australia. I changed them from like this big lump of, bosomy girliness in frock, I changed it to like three separate individuals that he's all having these like secret affair with all over. So each one of these women are different. And they're all competitive with each other. And they all hate each other. And they all think that they're his favorite. So
that's good.
It'll be fun.
Good. Yeah, that'll be great fun.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you one last question before we open it up to the audience, who I'm sure will have many questions of their own. How do you think the writing of Beauty and the Beast has informed the writing of the subsequent films for which you wrote the screenplay?
I learned so much from Howard. I think remember he would say, he was such a devotee of Disney movies. He talked about Pinocchio quite a bit. He talked about the emotion, the evocative emotion of Pinocchio and Geppetto's workshop. And he would say every scene in a Disney movie has an umbrella of emotion around it, or action, or whatever. It has something around it that imbues it with a feeling. I've taken that with me through the rest of my career. Like if I'm writing an emotional scene or whatever, so every scene needs to have this umbrella of feeling, of whatever it is you're trying to evoke. So yeah, there's that. And so many lessons I learned from him.
That's completely wonderful. Thank you so much. Now, are there any questions in the audience for Linda? I think it'd be great if we turn on the light a little bit so that we can actually see who we are talking to. We haven't been able to see you until now, so it's great to see you all. There's a question there in the front, but everyone will get their chance.
Testing? All right. So this is maybe, I understand if you can't answer this like super specifically, but when I, as a millennial, think of Disney, I sometimes think of them as a very like commercial power. Like, they create movies to sell toys, for example. What would you say in response to that in terms of how they maybe influenced or didn't influence certain creative choices in this film?
In this particular film?
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking about any toys at all. And I wasn't even thinking about merchandising at all. My job is to tell a story that will move an audience from 8 years old to 80 years old. Disney it's commerce. It's obviously, the entertainment business is commerce. They make money. So, but my job is to entertain you. My job is to make you feel something. My job is to make you have a cathartic experience. And whether you buy a toy when you exit through the gift shop, that's not my issue. And no one gives me notes to say, oh, you need to put this in or that in so we can merchandise it. I don't even think about it. That's all I can do.
What was your favorite of all books as a child?
My father forbade a television in our house. So, and we belonged to the Heritage Book Club. So once a month, we got this incredibly beautiful bound book in a sleeve. And we had a library with all the books. My favorite book, I have to say, was To Kill a Mockingbird. My animals are all named Bradley, Atticus, you know, Scout. It was for me, it just moved me. And my favorite movie was obviously the movie of To Kill a Mockingbird, but also the movie that really, when I think I was like 12 or 13, I saw Lawrence of Arabia and David Lean. And the epic storytelling, the epic nature of the storytelling, bringing it down to the personal, moved me so much that it's why I can only write big, the big story with the personal thing in the middle. And I know that came from Lawrence of Arabia.
Sorry, over here, other side. I was wondering, a bit of a tall ask, I apologize, but if you could talk a little bit about your involvement on The Lion King specifically.
Lion King?
Yeah, the animated, one.
Lion King was, Jeffrey Katzenberg wanted to do a story about the coming of age of a lion cub in Africa. And they had done a lot of background art, so it was like obviously something that needed to happen. It was so incredible, this beautiful art. And he told a story. He told a story about something that happened to him when he was a very young man. He was married with children, and something very significant happened in which he had to go in front of the Congress and Judiciary Committee and testify about something that happened that he had done for an avuncular figure. And he told this story with great feeling, and he said, there was a moment when I was stepping on, prior to that, his friends said he should leave the country. So he said, there was a moment when I was stepping onto that podium, or wherever the witness stand, I guess. He said that when I took that step, I knew I was a man. He told that story, and I thought, okay, how do we tell that feeling in Africa with a pride of lions? And who was the avuncular figure that betrayed him? So that, for me, started moving things around. And there had been a script before that. The hyenas were the villains, and Scar, his name wasn't Scar, he was just sort of like this random, crazy lion way out there. And so I brought him in to be that avuncular figure. And really then I added a little Shakespeare. Throw a little Shakespeare on top of that, throw a little Hamlet in, and that's kind of how it all began.
Hi, yes. You mentioned that you had got the Beauty and the Beast role, but you sent you sent in a script prior that was never made. Did you do anything with that in the future, or can you disclose any of what that is?
It doesn't belong to me. They paid me, so it belongs to them. It was a Winnie the Pooh story. Yeah, they didn't make it, but cute, I think.
I'm so glad you asked that question, because I wanted to know what it was.
Winnie the Pooh.
There are more questions here. There's one there.
You touched on this briefly already, I believe, but I'm curious about the difference in your process when you write for live action versus animation, when you're writing for someone like Angelina Jolie versus a feather duster or a teapot, when they don't have things like physicality or gravity to constrain them.
What was the question again?
The question whether there's a difference between your writing for animation or live action films, whether you're writing for a specific actor or actress like Angelina Jolie, or I think you referenced
or a
the teapot.
Or a
Yeah.
feather
Mrs.
duster, and how that process goes for you.
She wasn't, well, as we said, it's a haiku, writing animation. So really, as they say, show it, don't say it in animation. And in live action, you can say it more. Because you have real people, and it doesn't have to be animated, and every single word doesn't have to carry so much weight. And you can just be a little, you can be a little more florid in the screenplay, because you're trying to evoke, and what you're basically trying to do is attract an actor. You're trying to find the scene that you're going to write that this actor has to play. So you get them. So, that's how you can, it's a little freer kind of writing. And so when you're writing animation, you're constantly in your head going, okay, this has to be animated, it has to be storyboarded, and it also has to keep, because it's a family audience generally, it has to pretty much be kind of moving around a lot. You can't have two people just sitting having a conversation for very long. Does that help? Yeah.
Hi. Over here.
Oh, hi.
Hi. First, thank you so much for writing such a classic movie and a very powerful, impactful character.
Thank you.
And
Thank you. Thank you.
as a feminist, also as a female screenwriter, what was one of the biggest challenges, it's a two-part question, pardon me, what was one of the biggest challenges you faced in being a female screenwriter and also for this film?
Everything. It was really hard. I can't say it was easy. I came in at a time when animation was was shifting, and prior to that, there mostly was the storyboard people who were credited. The story department was credited with with writing the script, and Jeffrey Katzenberg brought in the concept of the screenwriter, and I was the guinea pig.
Always fun to be the guinea pig.
Always fun. But there was a lot of suspicion, because this was changing the way it had been done since Walt. And I'm a woman. So it was not, and there weren't that many women in the room. There were some women in the story department, but not that many. And it was not easy. And at times I thought I should quit. I really did. It was kind of that hard. And I wanted her to be strong. Like for example, Belle's waiting for her dad to come home. And so the story people had Belle baking a cake. And I was like, no, this isn't the Belle we're talking about. We're talking about Belle would be putting pins on a map of where she wants to go in her travel in her life. So yeah, right? I love baking cakes, though. There's nothing wrong with baking cakes. I love that. But that was the point, and there was a lot of pushback, and I pushed back, and many tears. And I was on that movie for 4 years. So it was, it was worth it, though. I felt like I was doing this for women. I really did at the time. Thank you.
Not to pile on that, but I was 7 when this movie came out. I was a voracious reader, and this heroine and this movie has been so foundational for my life, and I really appreciate that, the permission that you created for girls to be dreamers, even within the construct of a Disney story, has been so meaningful for me personally, and I want to thank you for that. But it's not my question.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
Beauty and the Beast is it's a tale as old as time, and it's retold over and over again, both as a literal adaptation and as a trope, like a Beauty and the Beast trope. And I wondered if there are any other versions that especially resonate with you, or that you feel addressed something that you didn't get to.
other versions of Beauty and the Beast. I think, really, the movie for me is in the past, and it's set in stone. But the show has been fluid, and the show I've been working on for 20 years. I've rewritten it. I've worked in the theater with the actors. Changed interpretations many, many times. So for me, the evolution of Beauty and the Beast is still happening in the live stage production. It's a fluid, living, organic thing. So I can see a scene and I can go and rewrite it and go to rehearsal and put it in, and it changes the next night when you put it in the show. So for me, that is how I've been working on this show for the story of Beauty and the Beast for 25 years, I would say. Yeah.
What's the story you still most want to tell or adapt?
I think I'm done with fairies and magic. I'm really very, very interested in animals. I'm really very, very interested in animals, and I'm looking in the world of animals because I think that they're so fascinating. I'm reading a book called Immense World right now that is just the things that we do not understand and know about the animal senses would just astonish us. So I'm sort of looking in the animal world, actually.
That's wonderful. I think there's another question here.
Thank you very much. I really was fascinated by your talking about your explanation about how the original screenplay that you wrote turned into a musical, and how that then turned into animation, and all the talk about haiku and how just extremely specific it goes. And I'm very also fascinated by, how you keep evolving the stage show as it's going on for 20 years. But I would like to hear if you have anything to say about from the movie originally to the stage show, like what kind of evolution was that?
From the movie to the stage show was quite challenging because we had these objects. They were really significant characters. And how are we going to do them? So it was just, how are we going to do this? And we also wanted them to be able to emote. We wanted actors to play them, right? So they can't be this big. So really the idea came that, and also in the show, they're much more invested in the Beauty and the Beast breaking the spell, because in the show they are changing. They're not just static. They're not already a complete pot, or candelabra. They're evolving as the beast becomes more beastly. They become more and more. So in the show, there's a scene where Mr. Cogsworth shows up and he has this winding handle on his back and doesn't know where it came from. And there's this panic by getting it off and trying to get it off him. So we're using comedy to show that they are evolving as well. So the entire emotion is so much more heightened. But it was like trying to figure out how on earth are we going to do these objects on stage and have actors play them that enable that idea to occur. And it really, it brought so much more to it than if they're already completely a teapot.
Right. Well, I
Right
think...
next door.
Oh, there's another one here.
I had this opportunity as a prolific Disney screenwriter. I'm curious to ask why, in the history of the animated series that they made, the mother is always deceased or something. She's missing. Well, you were there, so can you explain why the company?
I was there.
Why does the company do that?
So here's the story. In a perfect world, you have a perfect balance of mother and father. And the whole concept of storytelling is drama and character growth. And how do you grow? And when do you grow? And you don't grow when it's a perfect world. You know, a garden is lovely, but you don't grow there. You know, you need to change. The protagonist has to change in some way and grow in some way. And oftentimes, it is the loss of the parent, one of them, that drives that character forward for growth and change. So that's why so often it is a trope now that, you know, the mom's dead, so I'm sad and I'm going to go over here and do this. But that's really the rationale of why, you know, you're always, you know, there's a protagonist always that their mom just died, so they're going to do this, or, you know, so much now, you know, the mother died, you're an elderly person, your elderly mother died, and then suddenly your life changes. The mother is crucial. My mother just died, actually, 4 weeks ago. So this is huge for me to be here because it's really in her honor and my grandmother's honor. But that's why, yeah.
Well, Linda, thank you so much for sharing this. This is a very moving way to end the conversation. Yeah. But thank you very, very much for that and for all your insights with regards to writing Beauty and the Beast and bringing this whole story to life. That was such a pleasure to talk to you tonight, and such a pleasure to have you all here. And I hope you enjoyed it just as much as I did.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you.